Hello, welcome back to Let's Play Jane's Fighters Anthology as we continue with the reference materials, which it appears we're almost done with the fighters, so we'll be able to go into what the game calls Bomber next, and oh boy, this is going to be a long one. The X-32 ASTOVL, or ASTOVL as I generally call it, Joint Strike Fighter, formerly known as the Advanced Short Takeoff Vertical Landing. Special Summary Report. Introduction. Despite its not inconsiderable size, Jane's All-the-World's aircraft 1995 to 1996 is unable to devote the descriptive space deserved by a few of the most interesting aircraft programs currently underway. One such is the Joint Strike Fighter program, which proposes to satisfy diverse specifications issued by the U.S. Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and by the Royal Navy. 3 consortia are bidding for the JSF development contract, and 2 of them will be selected in November 1996 to proceed into the second phase of assessment. In this special summary report, prepared for Jane's Information Group by John Fricker, is detailed the background to the competition now proceeding. Each contender is described and analyzed, and potential markets and applications of the successful design are discussed. And of course, as always, remember, this was like... Okay, so these articles, it sounds like they pulled them all from Jane's All-the-World's Aircraft 1995 to 1996, and the game itself, this one in particular, released, I forget, somewhere between 1999 and 2001, give or take, 1999 or 2000. So, this is going by the 1995 date here. This data is 28 years out of date. This is probably older than some of the people who are watching this video, so. Few experiences are more enthralling than a glimpse into the future. Although many aspects of JSF remain classified or commercially secret, enough has emerged to present what is at least a grainy picture of air combat operations in the second decade of the next century. Undoubtedly, where JSF leads, other designers will follow. Never has an aircraft been conceived with the intention of being so many things to so many people. Previous attempts by the USA to produce a by-service fighter or attack aircraft are less than encouraging. The naval version of the General Dynamics F-111, for example. Now, the hurdle has been raised even higher with the added requirement for vertical capability in some versions of the JSF. Designers will need to use every ounce of their wit if they are to meet the challenges posed by this exacting equipment. Even as an embryo, JSF has a fascinating story to tell. This is it. Paul Jackson, Editor-in-Chief, Jane's All-the-World's Aircraft 1995 to 1996 edition. JSF, a future world fighter program. The Pentagon's Joint Strike Fighter program, which Lockheed Martin Tactical Aircraft Systems President Dane Hancock claims will set the world fighter market stage for the next 50 years, has evolved following the radical bottom-up U.S. defense review initiated with the end of the Cold War in the early 1990s. Recommendations of this review included cancellations of the USAF's ambitious multi-role fighter and the USN's equally advanced AFX New Attack Air Superiority aircraft projects, which, in August of 1993, Pentagon Acquisition Chief John M. Deutsch directed should be replaced by a single Joint Advanced Strike Technology Program, or JAST, for development of a new tactical fighter with limited supersonic capabilities in the Mach 1.2 to Mach 1.5 range, and a range of 500 to 700 nautical miles, or 926 to 1,297 kilometers, or 575 to 806 miles, or more. At that time, the JAST program was running parallel with Advanced Research Projects Agency, or ARPA, and U.S. Navy Advanced STOVL studies of both conventional and VSTOL versions of similar designs. 2 contractor teams have been selected by ARPA in March 1993 for Phase 2 risk reduction of a 4-part feasibility program for advanced STOVL, or ASTOVL, combat aircraft applications aimed at producing a joint service common affordable lightweight fighter, CAF. JFFs will replace a wide range of U.S. combat aircraft from the A-6, A-10, and F-14 through F-15s, F-16s, F-18s, and AV-8Bs to the F-117 with 70 to 80% commonality. It is currently envisioned The STOVL variant would be used only in the US by the Marine Corps, with a requirement for 642 as AV-8B Harrier 2 Plus and earlier FA-18 replacements, plus 60 for Britain's Royal Navy. United States Air Force, now with a notional requirement for 2,036, originally 1,874 JSFs, and the USN needing 300 for its supercarriers, all including attrition reserves, plan to replace the STOVL vertical lift systems with up to 1,588 kilograms or 3,500 pounds of extra internal fuel. Agreement had earlier been reached on the 9th of August 1994 for the UK to fund some 35% of the ASTOVL program up to and including the Phase 2 concept demonstration. It then had the option of continuing into the engineering and manufacturing development, or EMD phase, at considerable extra cost. Only 20% of the UK total was to be in cash, representing an initial investment of $12 million. The remaining 15% was to come from MOD and UK industry VSTOL inputs from such projects as the Defense Research Agency's Vectored Thrust Aircraft and Advanced Flight Control, or VAC, Harrier program, and BAE Rolls-Royce work on integrated flight propulsion control systems. BAE was teamed with McDonnell Douglas in R&D for Phase 2 of the ASTOVL program, while Rolls-Royce was working with all the US contenders on their lift propulsion systems. From its further JAS commitments on 6th of April and 20th of December 1995, the UK has a 10% share, costing some $200 million in the concept demonstration phase, in which several other British companies are also involved. Britain is looking for a proportionate work return, and at the request of Boeing and Lockheed Martin, BAE has been discussing its possible involvement with them in continued cooperation to exploit its VSTOL capabilities and experience if McDonnell Douglas is unsuccessful in its JSF bid. Design requirements. JAS contractors have been working in guidelines rather than firm requirements, which by mid-1996 were still being defined through the concept development phase to produce a Joint Operational Requirements Document, or JORD, by 1999. While the USAF is mostly interested in a multi-role successor to the F-16 with an affordable degree of stealth, the United States Navy is looking mainly for what has been described as a first-day survivable strike aircraft in the USMC for a supersonic close support STOVL replacement for the AV-8B and CTOL FA-18. Requirements have been mentioned for a Mach 1.4 supercruise, that is to say without afterburning. Basic concept of the JSF is airframe modularity and commonality between Air Force and navalized variants from a single production line using advanced manufacturing techniques without compromising service mission requirements. At the moment, the U.S. Navy uses different fuels and refueling systems, ejection seats, and AIM-9 air-to-air missile variants from the United States Air Force, among many other non-standardized items, and the JSF program is the first serious U.S. attempt to achieve full inter-service combat aircraft commonality from the initial design stage. Low observability requirements will mainly be met by airframe shaping to minimize radar reflections, but next-generation stealth coatings are also being explored to limit visibility in infrared and visual spectra. These smart skin concepts attenuate radar reflections by use of customized carbon molecules, which, when activated by an electrical charge, can also change through a range of colors to match the local environment and minimize detection by optical sensors. Wow, so they were talking optical camo in the very early stages of this project. That's a new one for me. Haven't heard that before. The priority accorded to stealth in the JAS design requirements is reflected in the decision for primary weapon stowage to be internal. This would then allow maneuvers up to 8 to 9G for aerial combat, which would be reduced to about 6.5G, with a corresponding loss of stealth characteristics when external weapons weighing up to about 5,443 kilograms or 12,000 pounds would be carried on 4 specified underwing stations, including 2 with fuel feeds. USN JSF requirements include internal stowage of 2 weapons up to 907 kilograms or 2,000 pounds in weight, including the Joint Direct Attack Munition, or JDAM, the Joint Standoff Weapon, JSOW, glide bomb, and the Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile, or JASSM, to be carried over an unrefueled radius of up to 600 nautical miles or 1,112 kilometers or 690 miles. USAF internal weapon requirements over similar ranges are only for 2 high-yield 454 kilogram or 1,000 pound JDAMs or missiles of equivalent weight. High-yield conformal weapons in the form of smaller, smarter blast and penetration bombs of this weight, which blend into the aircraft shape and give equivalent results to current 907 kilogram or 2,000 pound bombs, are currently being developed through 4 JAST-funded programs to increase available payloads without unduly augmenting aircraft radar signatures. These are required mainly by the United States Air Force, which plans to carry these and older weapons with radar-absorbing coatings for external carriage. For its first strike mission, the USN will use only internal stowage, while the USMC is the least worried about stealth considerations. Initial ground tests were completed in 1995 of the J-1000 high-yield bomb, which showed comparable blast fragmentation penetration to the 907 kilogram or 2,000 pound BLU-109. Original JAST proposals included offloading many of the avionics required for surveillance, targeting, and queuing information to other sensor platforms for digitized data transfers. Real-time target data could be collected by satellites, airborne and ground radars, and infrared systems to be analyzed, processed, and transmitted by AWACS aircraft or ground stations. This would allow the definitive JAST aircraft to have only a limited avionics suite with corresponding economy and reliability. A low-phased array fire control radar has been specified. For maximum economy, JSF avionics will aim for 90 to 95% commonality among the 3 versions and employ open system architecture using commercial off-the-shelf equipment and software wherever possible. Obviously, they ended up having a rather significant amount of sensors to the point where where some people have argued that the JSF can stand in on a limited basis for a dedicated I-STAR aircraft. Avionics will include a stereo helmet-mounted sight with navigation and targeting symbology, possibly eliminating a head-up display. Voice recognition command system, 3 15cm or 6-inch or larger multifunction color flat cockpit displays, an internal laser designator, IR sensors, and defensive aid subsystems, and fly-by-wire central stick. Hands-on throttle and stick, HOTAS, and thrust vector lever. A low observable cockpit canopy must allow 30 degrees downward lateral visibility and 17 degrees over the nose from a 171/2 degree. What? I think they mean from a 17.5 degree tilted ejection seat. Engine options. Core the GEA FXL 75.6 to 80.1 kN or 17,000 to 18,000 pound high thrust to weight ratio lift engine nominated for McDonnell Douglas's JSF project is based on the XTC-16 Advanced Gas Generator demonstrator, now redesignated the XTC-76. This has been developed by Allison and GE as a team program to produce smaller, more powerful, and 20% cheaper power plants, and Rolls-Royce will design and manufacture a new LP turbine section. IHPTET fighter engine goals include 100% improvement in thrust-to-weight ratios by 2003, with 38% better fuel consumption. Bench running of a GEA-FXL is planned to start in 2000, with the first flight 4 years later. Role applications. For the United States Air Force, the JSF is crucial in its role as supplementing reduced procurement of some 442 Golden Bullet air supremacy F-22s as an affordable next-generation F-16 replacement with low observable characteristics, as evidenced by a recent increase in Air Force requirements to more than 2,000 aircraft. The USAF JSF has been described as an air-to-ground workhorse, which confirms its Air Force priorities shared by its Naval and USMC versions, in supplementing more than 1,000 multi-role FA-18EF second-generation Hornets planned for service from around 2001. Although substantial radar cross-section reductions have been achieved with the FA-18EF, despite its greater size, the JSF is important to the USMC in representing their first stealth aircraft. It was therefore essential, and according to former USN Air Warfare Director Rear Admiral Brent Bennett, for attacking strongly defended critical targets at an early stage in future conflicts. His successor, Rear Admiral Dennis McGinn, confirmed that the JSF would be the USN's Day 1 strike aircraft from 2010 to attack high-value targets and roll back integrated enemy air defenses in seed roles to clear the way for the FA-18EF. For its flying artillery roles, the USMC is totally dependent on STOVL aircraft to achieve the air support reaction times of 7 minutes regularly demonstrated by its AVABs. According to its Deputy Chief of Staff for Aviation, Lieutenant General Harry Blott, its JFS will therefore be vital for the USMC after 2007, when the AVABs reach the end of their useful lives. As previously noted, USMC JSF short-range close support operations could make maximum use of real-time data links from off-board tactical sensors such as AWACS, joint stars, RC-135VW rivet joint, RC-12 guardrail, and UAVs, allowing a minimal targeting and queuing avionics fit. Beyond about a 173 nautical mile or 320 kilometer or 199 mile radius of action, however, when satellite data could become the primary reference, or when attacking mobile targets, more reliance must be placed on onboard sensors. A full range of these will also be required to export JSFs to the many smaller air forces lacking off-board sensor systems, which is probably why they ended up including a bunch of sensor systems on it. World market prospects. If the US and UK industry JSF cost, commonality, technology, and timescale targets can be achieved, which is at this stage highly uncertain given the number of imponderables involved, not least of which is continuing funding support on the required scale from Congress, this program could have a major impact on the world combat aircraft sales situation. For a similar price to the current Sukhoi Su-27 series, the JSF would offer next-generation multi-role capabilities and technologies with unrivaled versatility from its model options, plus far lower life cycle costs, albeit with lower outright speed, performance, and weapons loads. JSF agility would be matched only by similar thrust-vectoring fighters such as the F-22 and Su-35M, while operating ranges on internal fuel will be increased compared with fighters in the F-16 class. Some contention has emerged concerning the STOVL requirement, which certain congressional circles have attempted to have deleted. The USN has shown some interest in the tactical possibilities of STOVL, although the USAF is apparently less impressed. Concern has been expressed by both services over the penalties in terms of reduced weapon load and range capabilities, as well as compounded stealth problems incurred by STOVL requirements. While new technologies have gone some way towards reducing these penalties, they have not yet been totally eliminated. The supersonic STOVL JSF could have good export prospects, however, with such Sea Harrier operators as India, Italy, Spain, and Thailand, and other interested nations like Australia. Still to be demonstrated is the effect of the JSF on other top-end advanced fighter exports, especially Eurofighter and Rafale. While the first JSFs are unlikely to become available for export until about 2010, recent delays in the initial EF-2000 and Rafale delivery schedules from defense budget economies will narrow their nominal advantages in timescale. With considerably lower volume domestic sales basis, European fighters are also likely to find it very difficult to compete with JSF aircraft sales prices. And that concludes the article here. We can see the Desert Variant X-32, which is the McDonnell Douglas entry that lost to the Lockheed Martin X-35 entry. And there's so much in those articles that are out of date, like how they're like, oh, it'll have minimal onboard avionics, and it's like, nope, that didn't happen. Oh, it'll have optical camo. Nope, that didn't happen. But the one thing it did do is I think it did end up being a good replacement for the fighters it was meant to replace. The F-16, the F-18, the legacy F-18, that is, the Harrier, the A, B, and C all do their role very well and bring increased performance in just about every aspect, with the only way I think they fall short, because I went and I read the specifications, at least the unclassified ones, and I think in some cases the F-35 can carry less than the legacy aircraft in an internal-only configuration, but they carry more when you include the external stations. And on top of that, obviously, they have a greatly reduced radar cross-section, they longer range, higher speed, so they're just overall superior aircrafts, and they've had teething problems, which, you know, some of that can be budgetary constraints, some of that is Lockheed Martin's greed, obviously, but I think in the end we got a pretty capable fighter, despite all the media hand-wringing over it and the pearl clutching and the whatnot, and the, $1.7 trillion. It's like, well, considering that's including research and development and production and sustainment, that's $1.7 trillion for, what is it, 50 years of service plus the R&D and production costs. It's like, when you look at the R&D, production, and sustainment costs for the AV-8B Harrier, the F-16, and the Legacy Hornet, and you add them all up, I bet they're about, and adjust for inflation, obviously, but I bet they're about equal, if not exceeding, the F-35. So, I mean, we have yet to really see it in combat. All they've done is bomb a couple terrorists here and there, but I think it's going to prove its worth, just like the F-16 did, just like the Legacy Hornet did, and just like the Harrier did. And it looks like we have a single video, so let us watch that video.
For takeoff, the clutch is engaged to drive the lift fan. The lift fan and cruise nozzles are initially directed aft to maximize acceleration to takeoff speed. At liftoff, the nozzles are directed downwards to enable the airplane to jump into the air. As the airspeed increases, the nozzles are vectored aft again. When the aircraft reaches flying speed, the clutch is disengaged and the fan bay doors close. For landing, the engine is first throttled back. As the aircraft decelerates, the fan bay is opened and the nozzles are directed down and forward. Below about 200 knots, the clutch is engaged and the lift fan begins to develop thrust. As the aircraft continues to decelerate and the wing lift decreases, the engine throttle is advanced to increase the jet lift. At hover, the vehicle is fully supported by the jet lift. The throttle is pulled back to bring the aircraft to touchdown. Except for engaging and disengaging the clutch, operation is very similar to the Harrier. The X-32 will demonstrate the possibility of building a lightweight strike fighter that can serve all three services in the 21st century.
So let's talk, huh? I was also expecting a little more than just a V-stall tutorial, but you get what you get. But yeah, that's the other thing too, and I think this is more due to McDonnell. Well, actually, it probably applies to both designs, but because the short takeoff, vertical landing, the V-stall capability is only in the Marine version. I think the Marine version is the only one that can vector their thrust to any degree, and that's only to allow for that vertical takeoff and landing. Excuse me, because I believe in the in the A and C versions they dropped thrust vectoring to save money, basically, which that's fine. I mean, you get some extra maneuverability out of it, but they're still very, very maneuverable. If you've ever seen them in an air show, they're just as tight as the F-16. So that will conclude today's video on the X-32. I hope you all enjoyed it. Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned for next time, and stay safe out there. And we'll see you then.